Toot, toot. It's the Horn of Gondor. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of, this is technically Meet the Team. You know, it's still the Dirty Pool podcast, but this is where we kind of go through everybody that works at Barrels or worked on Winchester specifically. And today I'm joined by the ultra-talented multi-maker, vinyl enthusiast, Brad Albright. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. We got Dr. John in the house. We got the Aussies have joined us, a bunch of the regular faces and some new ones. We are multicasting on the YouTubes, the Instagrams, and the other one. So if you'd like to interact with chat, though, I only have those pulled up for Twitch and YouTube. If you are hooting and hollering at me on Instagram, I can't see it. Sorry. We got Carrie here, and without further ado, let's talk about artwork. We took the time to set up a bit of a screen share this time so we can take a look at some of the assets and where they came from in the game. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about, Brad, how did you get into pinball art?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's see. What's the short version of it? I've always been an artist, and I've also always been into pinball, but pinball has really kind of come in strong in the last, 7 or 8 years for me as I transitioned out of full-time corporate work as a graphic designer. So right as I was transitioning to being an independent artist and starting to explore more avenues for my personal work, whether it was art festivals or local markets or gig posters, that sort of thing. It's like I suddenly had enough room in my brain to rediscover pinball in the world at a time where it was healthy again. Because for the previous 20 years or so, it was this like diamond in a rough, exciting thing if I found it in the wild. But generally, they were in sort of like disrepair or just, not in great quantity, because I was never part of like the pinball community until the last, several years.
Sure.
So at that moment, it was like the perfect inspiration that I needed at a time where I wasn't expecting it. And it kind of not derailed, but it redirected my focus.
So I have some of your illustration work pulled up too, and your style is very, like, you have an identity for sure for your work. But some of this stuff, including some of your pinball stuff, like you have a Texas Pinball Festival poster here from 2019. So I feel like some of that pinball, ran in your blood pretty early, even though you weren't working on playfields quite at that point, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think even in my personal work, the facets that always seem to come in strong are interactivity and kind of like a nostalgia thing.
Sure.
Both of which are obviously pinball. And it's an amazing canvas for artwork, but it's also an interesting challenge because of all of the things that it needs to do, to be effective, to be useful to like the medium of pinball.
And you had two projects kind of at the same time at Pinball Expo. Look at you little busy bee. I imagine
three,
that three technically. What's the other one?
Monster League Hockey.
Oh, that's right. Of course. That was one of the best parts of the homebrew section for me. And one of the only ones that I was able to get on because the lines were, everyone talked about the Winchester line being so long, but the lines at the homebrew section were pretty much as long for most of the games if you combine them.
Yeah.
Erica says, hey, and is praising the Great Pyramid. Erica, thank you so much for joining. Shout out to Rewind Arcade. She's running their socials now, so you should go check out that stuff. All right, so your first game, what was your first pinball art foray?
So Led Zeppelin, the homebrew that I did with David Peck down in New Zealand, that was a re-theme of Bally Freedom, I think it was. So that was the first like official.
Cool. It's funny how a lot of pinball people that are in industry stuff right now came from a homebrew project or some sort of other pinball passion thing. I feel like you can't, like, there's no way to just dive into immediately working at a pinball company. You have to like somehow prove yourself on some sort of secondary project in some capacity.
Oh yeah, and it's a great training ground because until you do that, it's hard to wrap your head around what it needs to do and what the shapes are. Like, I mean, inserts alone, designing around inserts and designing over, over inserts, framing the inserts, that alone is such a specific thing that you have to do in pinball. And until you've actually had something in front of you, it's hard to know what that challenge really means.
Right. It really is a unique art. Just the challenges that go into pinball relate to a lot of other artistic endeavors. And I'll use the audio as an example here too, where like it's similar to doing game audio or it's similar to doing like trailer design or something. But when you get into the details of it, it's very different. And I imagine the illustration is no different, like you just mentioned.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think for a lot of artists that are interested in pinball, the concept of the cabinet is easy to kind of wrap your head around. It's not perfect rectangles like, a poster, but it's a flat piece of artwork and you can kind of work with that compositionally. But then once you start looking at a playfield and plastics and start thinking of it as a user interface.
And Winchester's a good example too of some of those angles and design challenges presenting some like unique things that we had to like kind of, I don't know, workshop and figure out. I can think of Behind the Peppers Ghost Box as one example, and stained glass both on the side of the cabinet as well as the plastics was another interesting kind of like, not design choice, but just challenge that we needed to figure out. And then, of course, the color tone for the playfield went through a number of revisions.
Yes.
But we'll hop into that in a second. This is live, so if you do have questions, please fire away. Pat the Weirdo is saying regarding the art, he wants to know, did you get photos of the house for inspiration?
Yes, definitely. We had a huge, library of photos from the house, from the licensor. We had photos that Karl took himself. I used Google Images, Google Earth specifically, to frame the angle of the house that I wanted. So there was no shortage of reference material. There's a virtual tour that you can
down
do.
To some of the like wallpaper, right? I mean, we used those reference images to create a lot of the like accents, right?
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Is there a favorite little art moment that you have on the entire playfield? Like something that you're just like extremely proud of?
That should be an easy question, but
I don't know. There's a lot of art on that playfield. I can imagine that not overwhelming, but there's just so many different spots.
I mean, I think overall, I'm just pleased that it came out as well as it did. Not just the art, but like the entire package with the rest of the team.
Totally.
It came together very fast. So I think when I look back on it, that'll be one of the things that I'm most pleased with, is that it almost birthed itself.
Sure. I think one of my favorite like memories of all these like Slack Zoom meetings that we had was, when you were given the stage to talk about where the art was, and then you would bring up your full screen kind of like iteration of it and just see how different it was from the week before and the week before. And it's just like, it went through, it shows a testament to your skill in terms of how fast you're able to both like create and iterate ideas. And, the team also helped. There was a 3D mock-up that Josh put together that we were able to put your artwork in to kind of visualize what the actual end product was going to be. Neat stuff like that.
I can show you that here too.
Yeah. Without further ado, let's fly on over to maybe some of those assets so we can show everybody. Okay. Dustin's asking, he says, are you going to Houston Expo and are they bringing more Winchester buttons like he had in Chicago? That's right. Because you made a bunch of custom wooden stuff.
Yes. And yes, definitely going to be there and definitely will have more.
Hopefully this is working. This is the first time that we've done this. I know that there's a bit of a gray gap on top, but hopefully you are experiencing our 3D
There you go.
3D mock-up asset of kind of final art assets put into the actual game.
Yeah. So you can see obviously this isn't like a proper shaped cabinet. The back box especially is like a weird it's a weird size. It doesn't match. But this is largely how I would be working to gauge the overall visual and to kind of test the flat artwork that I'm creating against the three-dimensional shapes that it lives in. So Karl was able to send me a step file, which if I toggle this over, it's just essentially the like engineering of all the physical components underneath. You can even see some of the things that I didn't delete out, coils and stuff like that.
Because we're not really
That's,
worried about rendering speed when it comes to previewing this.
no, no. So where this really becomes helpful is getting the player view, right? So that sort of foreshortened angle that the player is going to end up seeing it on, which is pretty different from how I would see it working on an art file, which would be like more straight on, right?
Right. And a critical
So,
difference to the experience, especially
yeah,
because you're looking at how the artwork kind of flows from foreground to background.
yeah, and I like to try to find opportunities to do things with like forced perspective. Uh, for example, the on the ramps, this sort of perspective view of stair steps in the house. So you're faking the geometry of stair steps on what's a flat, smooth surface that's angled away from the player. Another example is back here on the staircase to
Things to
nowhere.
nowhere. Yeah. Probably one of my favorite little features of the game. I think it's such a small, like obviously the turntable and other things are initially very cool, but just this like tiny little metal ramp that doesn't go anywhere that grabs a ball and then kind of poops it back
Yeah,
into a scoop is just like very satisfying when you make the shots.
yeah. And I mean, this is one of those things. Like, if you can see where my cursor is,
Yeah, we
like
can.
I would spend hours on this area, and you don't even really see most of this because this piece in front is opaque. But in actuality, this component right here is designed as a flat piece of art where the steps are sort of stretched so that when you look at it from a foreshortened angle, then it looks like natural stair steps, right?
Well, thankfully, everyone that plays pinball apparently is this giant monster, 8 foot tall person. So it's easy to see over that initial
Yeah.
first metal barrier. So the other thing I love about this is all the details. So can you talk a little bit about the color scheme? Because I know we had
Yeah.
hue shifted the tones for the kind of the blue and red element a bunch. And just you talked about it, and the initial drawings that you did were amazingly bold in terms of color scheme. And, the whole game has a really loud color package, but it didn't
Sure.
start that way. Yeah, as you have here.
Yeah, so this is like one of my earliest I guess mood boards. And this was probably pulled together for David to kick over to the licensor to, to gauge the general direction and make sure that there weren't any big red flags. So,
We got the famous barrels of fun tan man scenario going
mhm,
on.
yeah. So like and this is how I would think of things generally is it in my brain I start thinking more in like a monochromatic way, just basic textures and things aren't super loud. And I generally I would defer to a more muted color palette, but things always end up getting more saturated and brighter for the pinball. Um, the pinball consumer kind of expects a certain amount of saturation, and the question is like, does it fit the license? Does it clash with itself? Does it lead the eye around the right way? So
Right. And I think eye motion is an incredible important part with every element of a pinball machine is basically trying to guide the person as like a UI experience, right? Whether it's
yeah,
visual
indicating shot
assets,
lines and
LCD screen stuff, audio assets. Yeah. And so here you can see how you use the wisps to help kind of envision ball paths.
yeah. So this was pretty early on where it's like, okay, what if we're using these ghost wisps to direct the eye to the specific shot lines. And then somewhere along the lines, we decided that we were going to have both, um, benevolent spirits and angry spirits as, these two, like a dichotomy, right? So then in subsequent versions of this, it was a matter of balancing those two colors for different shots. Um,
Were you
so that it did.
intimidated by putting a giant like schematic, room schematic right in the middle of the playfield? Because it has to take up so much of the real estate.
Yeah, yeah, it takes up a lot of the real estate. I think,
Floor plan is the word that I could not think of.
yeah, I think what I was concerned about was that the placement and the angle of those inserts didn't naturally correspond to the like grid-like structure of rooms and hallways. So I needed to make sure that Karl was okay with it not necessarily being a one-to-one thing, where the floor plan could be maybe more of this like piecemeal,
Right.
um
Abstract
like
in the way that it would need to be in order to make sure that these inserts aren't boringly aligned and whatnot.
yeah.
Um,
But I mean it could have just as well been important for that to be aligned, and that was a challenge for me because I tried doing it that way and it felt more like looking at, say, like the map of terrain in like a Red Dead Redemption style game that takes place in the wilderness. Like it
right.
didn't feel like architecture. So finding a concept for myself that I could follow, which was that, okay, maybe these are scraps of blueprints that are kind of falling at weird angles on top of one another. So it goes from being this like grid-like focus to being something that's a little bit more abstract
Yeah.
with burned
Got this
edges and
paper, yeah. Plus the kind
yeah.
of incorporation of these like wisps and stuff. Um, as someone asked me this at Expo, I'd love to have this in video just to nip any of that stupid shit. But did you draw this or did you use AI, Brad?
No AI was used and no humans harmed by AI in this process.
There you go. These cobwebs came from human hands.
Yes.
But speaking of the wisp, though, you went through a few iterations of how to make the wisps kind of like have, I don't know,
Yeah.
a cool tail to them, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, somewhere in here. That's
But
one of those
and again, though, Karl
examples.
was super supportive of pretty much every direction that we started to go down. I mean, like he would give his preference in terms of how things were developing, but I don't know. How was your experience working with Karl?
Oh, it was great. I
Yeah.
loved having essentially a singular point person, um, because we had a good experience, I think, bouncing ideas back and forth, and it cut extra cooks out of the kitchen, to
And we
where
needed efficiency, especially for kind of like the timeline that we were on.
yeah, for me knowing that he knew what felt right, and if say there were like two ways of going about something, and if I didn't feel opinionated about it, I could kick it over to him and he would very
Right.
quickly be like, yeah, that one's good. And then I could run with it, and not having to make all of those final decisions myself was helpful.
So
And having
similar to Stern and their factory tours, where you get to see code names for a lot of the games that are there. For example, Buck is the code name for Fall of the Empire. Carrie is noticing that Springfield is the code name for Winchester, and that is
yes,
correct.
that's right. That's right.
So yeah, this is
Uh,
like one of the earlier, or this is one of the versions
this
of the yeah.
I think this is pretty far along, if not final. And this is an example of one of those things where I feel like you might look at anything that I've done and see that there's a consistent style, but for me, I have to go like a different way to end up there in the end. So I don't have like a tried and true formula that I can follow with each new project, much to my like discomfort.
I love
It's
that. I love having kind of like set from scratch, like presets and stuff just force you down like the same path. And,
yeah.
you know,
I mean,
yeah,
I do envy artists that have a tried and true way of doing their work because I feel like it would be more efficient and more not more reliable, but like the client knows what they're going to get.
sure.
Whereas every new client that I work with, even previous clients on a new project, there's a lot of faith that has to be in place to kind of ride out the rough sketches because I don't even know yet what it's going to look like, much less them seeing through the sketch to
It's
the final.
hard to have a vision of what the final product is going to be if you are not either directly involved or experienced whatever the either platform or artistic thing is. And I feel that's one reason why it's awesome that the Winchester whatever estate was so cool with everything. It was like, you know, it's not like they know what the process of pinball machines start to finish is going to be like, and to see a bunch of rough stuff, you know, early ideas that are mocked up can be scary to people that don't know. They're like, oh, this looks bad or whatever, and it's just like, this is a start of a path down a final product that when you get there you'll understand. So yeah, that's a great example of how the wisps kind of went from early to new.
Yeah, and so this is one of those things where I've never needed to do this before. I might never need to do it again, but I was trying to find the look that felt right and was gonna, convey the thing, be a good user interface detail.
And we
something
didn't want to rip off like Ghostbusters or anything that had existed before. Like you came up with a really kind of like your own ectoplasmy kind of like vibe for these effects on the playfield.
Yes, and that's a good frame of reference because I love Ghostbusters. I love what Zombie Yeti does, but I didn't want it to be that.
Right.
And
He has a very
so
specific style for his kind of like edging that goes on for those.
yeah, it's very line art inspired, which is actually my biggest influence is line art, black and white artists. But
Sure.
for this, it needed to be something more painterly, and I had to teach myself a new process to get the look. And so this like smearing of the texture, I had to learn how to create texture first, then smear it in a way that was a little bit chaotic, where I didn't have total control over this brush, but it made interesting textures that kind of was the right amount of like dangerous and specific, right?
Yeah, totally. Jojo Dojo, by the way, please feed your questions. If you have anything, this is the opportunity to bombard us with inquiries. Joe's asking what tools would an artist need to know to work in pinball. Joe, you got to be more specific because there's so many different creative positions and stuff that go into pinball making. I mean, even the rules generation to a large degree is a creative process. Oh, that's right. You did time lapse videos, right?
Yeah. So I have so much of these. I didn't even pick this one specifically. I just pulled one out. But you can see in the upper right hand of the screen where there's this sort of fisheye look. That is where I composited screenshots from Google Earth, where I positioned the view where I kind of wanted to get a cinematic view looking up at the
You
house.
made like a Frankenstein template based on stock or reference images and then traced over it to make the final product, right?
Yeah, and it was difficult to do that because the textures don't line up with one another, and so I had to kind of figure out or fake some of the details so that they look right, but
Sure.
they bridged those different.
But then you get
shots
that weird kind of like surrealist kind of vibe to it as well. I mean, it is pinball in the end, right?
Yeah, and you can also see I'm using kind of more of like a pencil-like brush here. Like it's textural. It's not a hard black edge like maybe you'd again you'd see with like Zombie Yeti's art packages are like very clean, very beautifully inked, and
Sure.
this is way like more rough and tactile,
Which is cool.
which
Those both work, but I think it gave it its own kind of identity as well.
yeah, and I may or may not do this on the next project. Just this is kind of what felt interesting to me for this, and I think it lent itself to the vibe of it.
Sure. Can we pop up the backglass? I think this is obviously, this is the showpiece of the game. It's what people see the most of. It's used the most in the kind of art assets for. We've got you got a time lapse on this too.
Yeah.
Boy, this ghost had a lot of changes. Do you want to talk about that, Brad?
Yeah. So, I think from the beginning with the backglass, I wanted to have an iteration of Sarah, inviting the viewer to the house in kind of a creepy way. So it's a little bit off-putting, but it's also like bringing you into the experience. I think some of the concerns that we were working our way through were whether she had a Casper tail, quote unquote.
Because we really didn't want, or I should say Karl, the team in general was really worried about things not looking like they were not original, but like that we were stealing or taking from other ideas. And we wanted the Winchester to have its own identity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she doesn't look really anything like previous iterations of Sarah that they've had. And thankfully they let us kind of do what I did.
Right.
And Julian Brown, she was able to kind of send me one of her 3D models as like a pose to kind of mock it up with, and then
Sure.
I did some further posing, took photos, and
did you model yourself? You like got up against the wall and you were just like, hello, welcome I'm Brad, inviting you to the Winchester Mansion.
Yes, my delicate features.
You like pulled a Titanic like moment as I'm knocking my mouse over.
One of my own French girls.
I'm my own French girl. There we go. Quote that one, Brad Albright. Clip it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is amazing seeing like, I love watching your techniques for how you're like building rocks out of nothing but just like, white shapes that you've created.
Yeah.
Do you want to pull up the side panels? I mean, I guess, like, is there anything specific that you felt was like extremely unique to this particular project compared to like other pinball projects that you've worked on?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, this project was cool being able to explore this like Victorian vibe as a whole. That's something I've never really had to do before, never really was motivated to do before, but for this, it was perfect. And the Victorian horror thing really speaks to me. So it was fun getting to explore things like stained glass, and I'm very pleased that we were able to let's see, what's the best place to show this? Let's get back over here.
Yeah, this is definitely better because you can see
the
stained glass quotes.
Yeah, so these are specific windows that are in the house. With a lot of things, we took a lot of creative liberty and kind of came up with our own stuff, but these are actually referenced from the house, and it's cool to have something like that so prominent on the back box.
Yeah, and there's a few things in the game that are, I think people have been critical of a handful of things, but many of those are actual things from the house. They're deliberate, full on, either not only references, but just like part of the house. Because this is, it is a non-IP game, but it is also an IP game. The Winchester's a real place. And historically, the things that went into it are really important. Like, for example, the Annunciator is a good example, both the visual asset and the audio asset, because there have been some pinside trolls talking about how the bells, this, that, or the other thing. But this is a real thing in the house. Like, that's the actual sound. It's not some made up thing that we put together.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
It's a historical piece. Yeah.
It's not high res enough to read it here, but this is an Easter egg. This says
Don't
DeAngelo
spoil the
and
Easter
Co.
eggs, Brad.
I'm happy to spoil this one.
Go for it. Zoom in. It's a cute little reference to Karl.
Yeah, it's DeAngelo and Co. And then I think it says Houston, Texas under it. Actually, it's so tiny. In the actual game, you probably can't even read it. It's so small.
I don't know. The fidelity of the print really blew me away. I remember when David had posted some test assets that had been printed out in chat on Slack and was like zooming in to make sure that, I don't know, screws aligned and all sorts of other stuff when we were doing QC as a group. And it's crazy, man. The resolution on these prints is unbelievable. Really, really shocking. I expected it to not be like that.
Yeah. But hey, back on the topic of the stained glass, I'm really pleased that we were able to keep so much of the plastics as stained glass. Like, I think in pinball, there's a lot of different uses of art on plastics. And here, it could have gone a different way. It could have been, interior scenes more in the vein of the organ that's here. I think this is like an older version of the artwork, but like this is one of the only like scene, does that make sense? Like scenes shown on the plastics.
Yeah, where it's not where it's like an image or a room that you're using to repurpose as a plastic, as opposed to creating a completely artistic, pattern that is being used for the plastic. And it really, to me, it really brings the whole room together. Which I forget what movie that quote is, but you're tying the side cabinet of the game into the plastics as well. And something I'm very critical on the channel is when the art package in the game is like really disconnected, either from the theme or just from the other assets that are involved in it. And for how wild and crazy and kind of loud the color palette is and artistic kind of direction you did for this, it all comes together. It all relates to each other, and it really does work. It's such a cool looking game. The dude's rug. That's right. It's the Big Lebowski. Yeah. Joe's saying with playfield artwork, are you using Photoshop and Blender mainly to get the art design? Well, Blender's just used for the mock-up, right, Brad?
Yeah, Blender's used more just for visualizing the three-dimensional space. I'm primarily working in Clip Studio Paint for assets, which is effectively Photoshop. It's just it has some slightly different tools, and the reason I started using Clip Studio is because on the iPad it'll run a full version of the software. So if I need to be mobile, I can bounce back and forth pretty seamlessly.
And just how high resolution are some of these like asset files, just to like put into perspective how power hungry
enormous.
they are.
Yeah, they're enormous, and the reason I'm not really taking you through, like, this is my backglass file, and there's hundreds of layers here, and if I start toggling them, it'll like slow down my whole system.
Yeah, which is great that you have these pre-rendered kind of like animations for it. David is here, Barrels of Fun CEO, dropping in.
Scrolling all the way down. Hey, David.
David has said AI. We already addressed that. How dare AI be gone? Human-made artwork for human-made games. Thank you for stopping in. Everybody say hi to David. Also, thank you for the new followers. I appreciate it. If you are just joining, David, we are currently going through kind of behind-the-scenes assets of what it's like to go from like mood board almost to final assets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I the geeks here too. You got the whole board barrels crew is spying on us.
Let's see.
So yeah, we ran through. Let's do the cabinet artwork. I guess we touched base on pretty much every aspect of everything up until the cabinet artwork.
Here's a view of some early, really, really rough. Like, okay, what if it's an exterior on this side? What if it's an interior on this side? And then here's an early sketch of what became the seance side, which compositionally is pretty close to what it became. But the details, of course.
Sure. Dallas After Effects user group just chimes in. They said, "What's an Easter egg that Brad put into the design?" You just missed it. We just showed it. It's on the enunciator on the playfield. You'll have to find a Winchester and climb on top of it to take a look, or watch this on video on demand and rewind it.
There's Sarah. That's kind of an Easter egg.
Yeah, and again, we had mentioned earlier that like so much of this, like the wallpaper, like there's all of the imagery, like there's so many legitimate references and or direct, like I mean, you took images from the actual house and then rendered them, with your illustration style. So like, so much of the house is brought to kind of be part of the game. And this isn't just the idea of what we think the Winchester Mansion is. It really is the house.
A big part of this process that I haven't mentioned yet, but I've made a point of highlighting when I talk to people about this is how much I was able to make use of assets from Joshua. Joshua, who's doing our user interface and our screen animations. Which
you can learn about on the previous episode of this, who I interviewed first.
That's right. That's right.
2 more. Anyways,
he modeled all of the interiors of the house, and let's see if I can find it. Here you can see this is reference that I built for myself using Joshua's assets and set up lights for myself. This is what became the front panel.
And credit game over screen as well, if I remember correctly, right?
Well, yeah, he does have a version of that, but I built this specific like combination of textures and things and gave it this sort of fisheye perspective in order to then create this illustration. So you can see.
Oh, right. Which I think the front of this is one of my favorite shots of it. I love the like eerie, you use the spirit energy in a lot of the kind of like assets that are around the game to help tie it in as well.
Yeah. But being able to.
But David's hopping on. He says, "Thanks for watching." Dirt Pool. That's not my name. Dirt Pool. God damn it, David. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy your call, my dude. Back.
Yeah, being able to pose assets to get a sense of perspective, to get a sense of lighting, the textures of the environment, and the crown molding, and all of this stuff like that. That stuff's very difficult to just generate out of your brain. And
for
so
sure.
having someone else on the team like Joshua who's using those assets elsewhere and creating them from scratch, having us be able to go back and forth, I think really helped with the total package becoming cohesive. And another example is on the playfield. We've got all the seance instruments. So we knew what instruments there were going to be.
Yep.
And Joshua started modeling up some of those things, and I was able to use those models and then create these kind of, loose pen and ink sketch versions of them for the playfield. And then on screen, we have the more detailed 3-dimensional versions of them.
As a funny side note for the instruments, all of the instruments that are in the game other than the gong were actually played with real instruments. I had Karl plays trumpet, and I forced him to do a little trumpet ditty for it. Sid played a high tom in order to get the tom out of it, and I have tambourines and bells lying around for the other ones. But we really tried to use as many non-stock and authentic, originally created things for as much of the playfield as possible, both in sound assets and also as your, with all your visual stuff.
Yeah. It's funny, of all the things I'm looking forward to experiencing in the gameplay, I can't wait to dial in more on how you match the pitch of the target sound effects to whichever song is playing at that moment.
It works well, whether you're hitting the drop targets, the treble and bass targets that are below the key, when the ball kind of falls straight down, kind of in front of that side ramp. It's above it's above the organ. Oh, we're inside of it. Whee!
Yeah, right there.
So those 2 targets, right there, those treble and bass targets that are to they're those 2 gray ones. Those have the most interesting pitch. They have a huge pool of tones that they can pull from, and as the ball bounces up and down on them, it plays multiple potential melodies out of it, all of which being in either a key or a relative key to what the music is playing. So it's neat. It's a subtle effect, but if you have multi-ball going on, it's pretty obvious. So. Yeah. Does the subway have any art? I'm going to go with probably not, Joe. Can you spoil the answer to that, Brad? Does the subway have art?
No, I don't think that it does.
If you consider opaque plastic art, then yes, it does. But the Behind the Peppers Ghost had a few iterations of potential artwork. That's a good example of something that's kind of behind a hardware or mechanic that we put in.
This my model here isn't a very good place to evaluate it, but the question was whether the effect was better or worse having artwork back in this space for the ghost to kind of play off of as it's layered in front of that thing without being distracting, because it needs to be as dark as possible back there for the effect to be bright. But you also want a sense of dimensionality. But you also then have to account for the height of the player, which is difficult. Yeah.
It is true. The Pepper's Ghost effect, even though you think it's just like easy, slap a piece of, angled acrylic in front of a LCD screen, you're good to go. No, we had to figure out how to properly align assets vertically in it for, the average height individual that might be playing the game. It was, I'm glad that it was not a problem that I had to solve.
Yeah. Here's like an artifact of the process. This is an older version of the Apron, where the player lock, ball, and the numbers weren't actually included in the print in one of like the early iterations of the design. And then we decided that instead of it only showing up when it lights up underneath, it made more sense to have it be printed across that surface, the same as the letters. I think it's much improved now, but
totally, especially for how much that's used and will be used. I mean, it does countdowns as well as telling you what ball is up, what player is up. Like the Apron is a pretty large part of the experience.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it won't be a surprise to anyone, I think, at this point that it does light up, but it helps that it looks complete when it's not lit up, and then you can be surprised about when it lights up.
Right. It's like, what's more important, the surprise that it does something or the fact that it's like repeat usable during the like entire game? Mm-hmm. And I think the second thing won more, because the surprise only happens once and you're like, oh, that's cool. And then it's more like, okay, I'm glad this does the thing.
Yeah. It felt kind of like vacant without having the print all the way across that surface.
For sure. I love all the little filigree and kind of like old, kind of woodcut pattern. And like, I feel like I'm in an old medieval, like tarot card kind of book with the stuff there. It's just super cool. Christopher Trancey says he loves the game. He loves Labyrinth. And we did a great job on these 3 pins. Thank you. I helped on some of those. So I guess, let's see, the earthquake tower, that was a plastic that kind of went in later on. And I feel like the sculpt in this is so enormous that it definitely kind of had to, it came into play in terms of figuring out how to do the art back there, right?
Yes. The perspective down on this piece of flat plastic to match the perspective of the house and the sculpt is kind of interesting. I think you notice that most on toppers, where they try to combine these 3-dimensional sculpts with flat plastics, and oftentimes they just don't jive very well together at all.
Right.
Like all flat plastics would be cool, all sculpted would be cool, but when you combine them, sometimes it's just a weird bit of contrast. And here,
right, you either get a dimensionality that's interesting, or you get a clash of dimensionality, which is like less cool.
Yeah. But here, we knew what we were going to be working with This was like provided to me from, you know, the guide for the sculpts being painted. So I was able to match those colors and match the perspective using
And
Blender, looking at it in this
and the
view.
house has some pretty bold, colors and trimmings involved in it. Rendell Resto says, is the game going to get a topper? There is no free topper with the game. I have heard rumors at Expo that there may be a fancy topper coming in the future. So I would say stay tuned for information on that. And then we have the classic Winchester Mystery House logo here, right?
Yeah.
I guess you.
Yeah. So the one that's on the back glass, that was Blake.
Yeah, shout out to Blake, the kind of pinch hitter of art assets and other kind of promo graphics. Blake is kind of a rock star to help get the games to finish line when it comes to making promotional assets and more. And so he created that Winchester one, right?
Yeah, the one on the back glass. And Blake's done awesome work on all the banners and flyer and promotional assets. And that one of the things that I am very conscious of when I'm working on cabinets is that it's a pretty good piece of real estate for translating to banners for shows. So
Right.
it's already a large piece of art, but I do my best to work at an even higher resolution, like 600 DPI instead of like normal print being 300. So
God,
that
that's so high. That's real ridiculous.
yeah, it's crazy. But then if you see the banners that we're able to bring to shows, we're able to then take what was a cabinet side
Sure.
and bounce it up to 8 feet, and it still looks really good.
Because I've seen that asset. There's drawing in that area that is generally cut off because it is not a square asset.
Exactly. Let's see. Where are we? There we go.
Just out of curiosity, yeah. So you can see there's house and paintings up there and stuff.
Yeah. So like the molding on the top of the walls isn't visible at all in the cabinet, but it's all painstakingly drawn just for the sake of having an
Not being
asset
seen,
that we might want to use later. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what is the file size of either like that or the backglass with all of its layers?
What do we got? 8.3 gigabytes.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. I think that some get up towards 12 at one point.
Yeah. Does this use the same material as doing for the cabinet art? Yes, it's not Radcals. I forget what the material's called, but it is the same shiny high,
Evergloss?
What's that?
Evergloss, I think. Right?
There you go. That's the one. I believe it is that. Cool stuff. Well, that's great, man. I don't think we've pretty much dove into every single component on it. Do you want to look at one of the stickers inside the cabinet door? No.
I actually, now that you mention it,
I was going to say, let's flip back to you so people can actually see your face and talk a little bit about the wooden kind of like three-dimensional artwork that you do as well. Some of which may or may not be inspired by the Winchester.
Yeah. Here, I brought one piece upstairs just in case it came.
Oh, wait, I lied. Can you pull up some of the sticker art for stand-ups and stuff? I feel like this is stuff that is very underappreciated because you just can't really get in and see it. Or, for example, like the treble and bass targets that we were talking about that have musical tones associated with them, they're facing the other direction. So you like don't even get to see them at all unless you're like leaning over the cabinet.
That's true. I was going to point out if I can. Let's see, where did I save it?
I love that Seventh Guest is in there. I've talked about that a few times, that Karl had sent me that as an original reference for the soundtrack. And it was not only a favorite game of mine from back in the day, but a huge,
the
huge inspiration for the sounds.
Yeah, major inspiration to me. A formative memory from growing up, and I was very pleased to be able to turn those kinds of inspirations back on the source, which it became very clear to me as we started like looking into this project that a lot of the things that I loved growing up were directly inspired by the Winchester House.
Totally.
What
I couldn't help. There's a number of like
here we
melodic
go.
Easter eggs that are kind of tips of hats to different things that may have been responsible for my pinball journey. So if you recognize any of those when you're playing, give me a shout.
So this is what I was looking at. These are Target decals, and I'm very pleased with the seance, like the 3 stand-up inline targets, the drop targets on the way to the seance room, because the plastic above is this sort of eroded wall where you've got the wallpaper and then the slats of wood inside the wall. And then underneath that is where you see the 3 drop targets.
Right.
And you've got a spirit trail kind of going into it, which is lighting it up from below. The first drop target is the wallpaper texture, kind of bottom lit by the spirit energy. The second one, after you've dropped the first target, is some wallpaper texture broken away, revealing the wall slats. And then the third is wall slats broken away, revealing this sort of spirit energy in the void, which is where you end up setting the ball.
You're like breaking through different layers as you get closer and closer to the seance kind of ball log. Very cool.
Yeah. So having that, all those like layers of dimensionality and the sequence of the art changing, to me, is one of my favorite parts of the whole playfield.
The plastic on top of that too is really neat, where the slats kind of like partially obscure the pathway into it, but really it's a complete, plastic acrylic top to it to keep the balls from, I don't know, launching out when they hit a target. But it just creates a really cool kind of like secret pathway kind of vibe to it, which it is literally.
For sure.
So
okay, I'll stop my share.
Hey, look, everybody! It's Brad. He's back. We're all back.
Hi,
Brad. All back.
Yeah.
No.
We've got this is Alfred.
So can you spin that sideways and show people both kind of like the dimensionality of it and the material? Yeah. So you work with wood. Do you like wood?
Mm-hmm.
Big fan of wood?
I'm a big fan of wood.
Nice.
I like wood. I like laser cutting. So this is an example of what I do in my personal work, which is to take illustrations and then break them out into these sort of stacked flat layers to give it more of this interactive, 3-dimensional quality. And then this would hang on the wall and be sort of set up in a way where it appears that, he's hanging from this noose being carried by a bird.
Good Lord, Brad, this is a family channel. How dare you? How dare you?
It's Alfred Hitchcock. Come on.
Oh, right. That's okay then.
So yeah, these are like the elaborate deluxe things where I experiment with materials, and sometimes
you have some with moving parts too. Do you have one of those on hand or no?
No, not really on hand, but yeah, sometimes they have spring mounting or ball bearings, and I have no engineering background, so it takes me weeks staring at a thing to figure out like how to make it move.
If only you knew some engineers to like
if only. Which, it's to that point, like pinball has been amazing because it's put me like up close and personal with people of all disciplines, yourself included, in a collaborative way that I've never before even wanted to be a part of. Like,
sure,
like entering into pinball, it's now a fun, rewarding experience to join forces with people. Whereas before, just as like an artist.
Are you saying on camera that you're going to do an illustration of the Great Pyramid for me? Is that maybe what you just said?
So on that topic, I need you to explain what is the background of this pyramid,
the Great Pyramid
of yours. Yeah.
I've talked about that a little bit in the past, but sure, we can dive into that.
Just give me the short version.
The short version is that the first game that I streamed and the one that I did sound design for is Twilight Zone. And on Twilight Zone, the power, which is the upper playfield on it, is directly inspired by this pyramid energy power Illuminati thing. So when the channel got started, I was just like, it'd be fun to have like kind of a gimmick, be a cult or whatever. And I was just like, well, what would we praise? I'm like, it's right there. It's just right in front of me. So thus the Great Pyramid was born, the god of pinball, and all praise. Yeah. So that's where that's from. It is both a non-serious and very serious thing because pinball is a very serious thing. And yeah, if you're watching now, you're part of the cult. So welcome to the cult of pinball. So yeah, that's where that came from. So you should absolutely check out Brad's work, his personal work, and also your wood stuff. If you want to buy Brad's wood, where can people get your wood?
Shop.albrightillustration.com, which it's a really long URL, but
well, I have the whole URL is sitting right below you. Like I can't point at yours. I guess over there.
Yeah. You can also you can follow me on Instagram. It's just Brad Albright, 1L, Brad Albright, and then everything's linked from there.
Is there like an evil Brad Albright that has 2 L's that we need to like watch out for or what?
I bet there is. Yeah.
It's like Bizarro Albright. Does he talk backwards and stuff?
That's
weird.
That'd be like half bright or all dark.
This is getting too deep. All right. So as we're wrapping up, we're at an hour now. If you have any questions that you'd like to throw at Brad, please don't be shy. What did I miss here? Rundle Resto says, are there any UV reactive inks on the playfield? I don't know. You'd have to get a black light and go check one out for yourself. Jay Biscuity says, wood is good. Huh?
Pinball.
That's true. And pinball is very serious. Amiga Cami is here. Missed that. She says she likes to have pinball artwork on her desktop. That's cool. It'd be cool if Brad could upload the rectangle artwork somewhere. Yeah, we'd have to get approval for that. It's a little hard to just throw assets around willy-nilly. As much as we did create these things, they're not ours to give away. And but having said that, Barrels has been really community focused. If you haven't noticed, David is like always out trying to mingle with people, having people over to the factory. Barrels is a pretty transparent operation, and I like that. I think that's pretty cool. So Joe's asking if you worked on any of the LCD artwork. No, I don't believe that's a Josh.
Not me. But to my earlier point, being able to bounce things between us was a nice way to keep it cohesive. And I am in love with what Josh and Julian and Trent are doing with the display.
Yeah, I totally.
Especially because they were able to go darker with it. It makes sense for cabinet art to be like loud and vibrant, but on a screen you can really dial in the
spooky factor.
Yeah.
It feels coherent in a cool way. Somebody at Expo was talking about how much they appreciated that the info that was on the screen was like exactly what they needed to see. It was in the right spot. It wasn't like overload. It's just you got the information you need in the right format. And I think that's a testament to both Eric for doing layout for that, as well as, as you mentioned, Josh, Julian, and Trent doing the art assets to help fill those ideas in. Yeah,
the user interface is really nice. And I like how like stuff kind of comes in, like some of the molding from the house will slide in and
there's a cool depth of field effect too when things are up in the foreground now. There's a lot of neat stuff coming. You had mentioned talking about Josh and his architectural renderings. The rooms that are coming are much more like elaborate on the inside, and that's very much part of the new like renders as well. The seance room is a box, whereas the North Conservatory is this wild, like fucking windows everywhere, crazy looking thing. So look forward to that. And if you can find a Winchester, yes, I know that they're kind of rare. Again, sorry. Check it out. It's going to be cool.
They'll be around.
All right. That's it. If anybody else doesn't have any questions, Paradolia just showed up. Sorry. He's like, you managed to catch us live as we're like signing off. As I say with all my guests, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out and talk about your work. I really appreciate it. Your work on the game has been part of the reason that I think it's such a magical, awesome experience. So
Likewise.
Thank you for that. If you have anything that you'd like to plug, I know we were talking about your website, but please take it away. The floor is yours.
The website, Instagram. I kind of bounce things to both of those. Facebook.
Sure.
I don't use
Some of those links,
I
I'll put them in the description.
Yeah, I don't use my like Albright illustration Facebook page as much as I should, but like my personal page. And
Dustin, that's a good point. Do you have a personal collection? Dustin's asking if you have any pins.
Oh, yeah, that is a good question, and the short answer is that pinball fights for the same space in my house as printers, 3D printer, laser cutter. So it's a challenge, but I have my P3. I have a Gottlieb. I'm probably going to let the
Gottlieb?
go.
Come on, man. What Gottlieb?
The hot shot. It's a hot shot.
Okay. All right.
And I really like it. But I'm probably going to find a new home to make room for my Winchester. And then to my left here, I have this is that's an arcade 1-up that I completely gutted and put new screens and a computer in, and it's running like a full like VPX thing.
Nice. VPen stuff is neat. The homebrew and VPen people are really neat. I have a project coming up soon that I can't wait to share with everybody about that. But I can't help but wonder, man, like if you could make extra space for a pin, can I ask you, maybe out of these 3 pins, which one you would add to your permanent collection?
Out of which 3?
I'm going to tell him. I'm going to give you 3 options. You got to pick one. First pin would be Raven. The second pin would be Raven. And the third pin, if you had space, it's a Raven.
Probably Raven.
All right. That's a great choice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My first game actually was a Motor Dome.
Okay.
A lot of people like laugh at that, but it was kind of fucking awesome.
I chuckled. Some of these terrible games, have a special place in a lot of hearts. I can think of Hard Bodies, Laser War, Future Spa. Like, there's a bunch of games that I would consider are not necessarily meme games, but they're, amazingly bad in the best possible way.
Yeah. It was fun, and I learned a lot, like just fixing it up. But in lieu of games in my personal collection, we just got a new arcade less than 3 miles from our house here in Louisville, Texas.
Oh, really?
It's called Press Start Play.
Okay.
And it's this remarkable arcade that I don't know how it makes any sense at all, but they have like all LE trim games. There's almost 70 pinball machines.
Wow, that's a pretty damn good number, man. I would be pleased with like 8 to 10 in an arcade, but that's times 7.
It's probably the biggest arcade, biggest arcade in all of Texas that just happens to be this close to us, and they just opened. So
that's incredible.
If you're in Texas or even like Oklahoma, it'd be worth a drive.
Even Oklahoma. Well, if I do make it out to Texas, will you come share a beverage with me and play at the giant 70 pin location?
Oh yeah.
Hell yeah. Fantastic.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'm just checking chat one more. Of course, we get a bunch of people filtering in right as we're shutting down. But are they going to do the upkeep, Joe says. It is hard. Arcades need to make sure that their games work, because otherwise it really sucks for everybody.
They do have proper pinball text there. In fact, if anyone in this area used to go to Bishop Site Arcade, a lot of those games and those texts have, I think, transitioned over to this space. It was within a private collection, the guy that opened the place.
Gotcha.
I haven't met him yet, but we're such fans of going there ourselves.
The real champs of arcades are the techs. I feel for anybody who has to go through that many games and make sure they're working and have to deal with ornery customers like beating up the games in ways that are just frustrating.
Yeah.
Anyways, without further ado, Brad, thank you so much. We're going to go do what we do. We're going to go find someone to raid and hopefully make their day by dropping a bunch of pinball lovers from the cult on them. Thank you so much for everybody who has hung out with us the entire time, for the subs, questions, and everybody else that's just throwing a lot of love over. I appreciate it. Can we throw up a pyramid? All praise, Brad. That's right. No, there's no wrong way to do it, man. You can do it however you want. Hell yeah. Look at that. That's a full double hand pyramid right there. Yeah. Thank you for opening your computer to us. Let's go find him. We're going to do the raid thing. Say goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Jeff.
I got to find the be right back button. There we go. I found it.